Okay, we're live here. Oh, I have to go back to LinkedIn. I want to double check this and see, is this working? Wait, it all needs to be working. I want to make sure. Okay, I've got to work on my LinkedIn Live. Something is always happening with this, that my LinkedIn Live is not doing what I want it to do. Let me see. I'm going to share the link really quickly on my LinkedIn. Share my referral link. No, that's not the link I want to share. I want to make sure people have access to this link. All right. Anyway, people are going to be able to see this on LinkedIn, I'm sure, but I'm confident in that. But I wanted to make sure the LinkedIn Live was working. Okay, I'm just double checking my LinkedIn profile one more time. All right, it's on there. It's happening. This is a thing. All right, and I'm going to go back to my other screen here so we can see everything. All right, and then I'm going to make sure the comments are live. Okay, so today we're talking about healthcare staffing, primarily the travel nurse staffing and per diem nurse staffing segments. These segments are what was the bee's knees during the pandemic days, and now it's still not back to what it was for those companies that got into those modalities of staffing in the last couple of years. And so the question is, where does the industry go from here? Where do those two segments of healthcare staffing go from here? And I'd like to say I can get a part-time job in Florida as a meteorologist in the summertime, because if you say it's going to rain and be hot, you're probably going to be accurate. So as an example, right now, travel nurse staffing is not going to go through the roof anytime soon. It's not. There's no data to show it. I was looking back at the history of travel nurse staffing. And it turns out and this story was corroborated a couple different places. And it's like in 1978 in Mardi Gras, there was a lot of injuries just from Mardi Gras shenanigans. And several nurses from different states had to come into this hospital system to help care for patients. And so that was like the first travel nurse to come. And now in the 80s, people refined the process and said, hey, go to this other state for experience or this other setting to broaden your career and your horizons. And that's a useful thing. Alaska, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, all these places that may not have the right infrastructure and clinicians available, they need help. And so the issue now, though, is fast forward 40 years, there aren't enough clinicians. We're not making enough workers fast enough. We're not making clinicians at the same rate that we should be making them to support our aging populations. And so when you have those dynamics, I was trying to adjust the screens here. Everything's, oh no, yeah, that's it. That's maxed out. When you have those demographics and those challenges, there's not that much wiggle room when it comes to a shortage. We have normal economic factors here, supply and demand. There aren't enough nurses. There aren't enough healthcare professionals in the U.S., and that's actually now across a lot of the rest of the globe that cares about these critical positions, nurses, therapists, and doctors, of course, in that group. So what that creates is this shortage where we have to kind of play musical chairs in different places to get enough nurses to be able to provide care to all the facilities and hospitals and patients that need it. And the challenge that happens is sometimes you got to send a person more than 50, more than 100, more than 1,000 miles to cover down on someone. And so that's a challenge. It's not logistically easy to do that. Stop your life, drop off your kids or your husband, and you're going to go somewhere else for 13 weeks. That's a commitment. So it's not an easy proposition. Right now, you're seeing maybe some younger clinicians that are just getting into that workforce opt for travel because they have less family commitments to tie them down to a single area, or they want to get that resume boost, or even some of that financial boost to help with student loans, or just helping get a good start to life and making a lot of money, which is usually the case with travel nurse staffing. However, now in 2025, the end of Q3, we're getting to the end of Q3 of 2025. It's not the same case as it was during the pandemic and even pre-pandemic. And so what you're having now is there's less money involved with this endeavor. So during the pandemic days, there was inflated rates for travelers, and it was very lucrative to be a travel nurse. And you made a lot of money, like a lot of money. I think some of the packages were 5 grand a week, like that's a lot annualized. And so that's not normal. Normal is maybe $2,500, $22,000 a week. And that's a good salary, a good wage, but it was out of control for good reason during the pandemic. So now in 2025 and going into 2026, that's just not the case anymore. So I'm sorry that I'm the one that will say it out loud. I predict that the travel industry will continue to flatten or go down a little bit, actually, because the facilities, the hospital systems can't afford it. I've gotten data and I've shown reports and other things that they have to run a business, the business side of healthcare, and they're getting squeezed maybe upstream by the insurance companies or whatever else the case is. But there's a push to get more clinicians to work full-time staff jobs. And that's the normal setup for a lot of positions. However, the nuance comes in healthcare because people get sick and people get healthy, and that has some fluctuations. And so if you can think logically about it, if a hospital always staffs to 200 people a day, well, some days they only need 180 nurses, and some days they might need 210. So if you don't have the ability to handle some of that volatility, you're just stuck at one flat price or one flat staffing level, and it might not be the best. So, and you don't want to overstaff because then you'll be habitually overstaffed, and that's expensive too. And you don't want to be habitually understaffed because then you get 1 star on Google and you'll lose patients and people will die. So that's where sometimes these staffing dynamics come into play, where how do we staff up? How do we staff back down? Float pools, per diem, travel. And that's where all this even comes from, to have this mix of opportunities for clinicians to be able to service or serve their patients in the various settings. So that's a big introduction to say, it's not gonna go back up anytime soon. No one wants to pay for it. Now there's also clinicians that are burnt out. They don't want to travel for it because it's not as financially incentivizing. And then the ones that will do it just because of school and career development, things like that, they're going to do it anyway, just at the maybe a lower rate or maybe the same pay rate. The problem too is, another problem I think is on the side of this, is that the gallon of eggs, a gallon of milk and a dozen eggs costs more now. There's more costs in the cost of living. And so it's not as lucrative or even financially viable to be a traveler, because your everyday living has gone up. So why am I going to figure out how to move houses or sell my house or do something else creative to not have a mortgage payment, then go to some other place, make about the same money, and then have to go back to wherever I came from and get a new house? That's just hard. So I think I'm going to just take some trends here just so I can use my whiteboard. I love my whiteboard. We got economics. And we have that clinician shortage. Right? So this is always going to be, not always, this is going to be an issue for a long time until we start a much more aggressive program to create more healthcare workers, which takes time. You've got to pipeline that. And that's another challenge too, is that we don't make workers fast enough. It's getting harder to become a healthcare worker. 4-year degree, then it's sometimes advanced degrees, or just to bare minimum to then be able to start doing patient care. And then on the doctor side, of course, it's even more schooling on top of that. So these are considerations to say, well, why is this problem not easily solved? Well, it could easily be solved, but there's a lot of bureaucracy. I'll give you a couple points on how I think it could be solved personally, and things that I'm doing just as a healthcare professional that sees it. And there was a guy that was posting on LinkedIn about how broken the healthcare system is, and it is broken. No one really is excited about their healthcare insurance. People are not saying, I'm so glad I have this healthcare insurance because it's affordable and they do a great job for me. That doesn't happen. Or I love going to urgent care, or I love going to the hospital because it's cheap and I can see the price and I know who my doctor is. That's not, we're not in that setup right now in the United States. So for some of those other reasons, the whole ecosystem needs to get really looked at. And I would love to assist any healthcare leader in the hospital setting or group system setting that says, hey, we want to solve all of our staffing challenges, then to provide a good environment for clinicians that want to work. And then, of course, the trickle down, the whole point of it all is for patients to have good access to quality healthcare. So I would love to be part of that project to help transform what that looks like and how that delivery model is even done. I think there's so much opportunity for innovation. I'm in the middle of 3 other projects right now, so I can't do the whole thing myself, and it takes a lot of money, unfortunately, just to get it all set up, and politicians to work through the legal requirements on what insurance needs to be in the mandatory things. But that's a sidebar, and I digress. So we talked about the economics, supply and demand. There's not enough clinicians. That's the same. That's going to be there for a while. Then you have the wages, bill rates, and then oops, sorry. So we got bill rates and then margin compression. There's still that disconnect between what the clinician wants to earn and then what the hospital is willing to pay. So the staffing company is still kind of squeezed in the middle there on the margin on how to make a profitable business. And so that's where you're seeing a lot of companies, yes, leverage AI in some of these pieces of the business to say, how do we get AI involved? How do we use AI to our advantage? How do we use AI to reduce costs? And then the other option is to look at, can we offshore? Can we outsource some of these things and find ways to do this at a lower price? And offshore, you can, some people are against it. It's one of those things where now, I was talking to someone today and they said, hey, I had a credentialing person who we did a Zoom call, video call, and they're in the Philippines, and I didn't know. I didn't know they were in the Philippines. They're just a person that could do the job, do it well. They had great Wi-Fi connection. We can communicate fine. And it's like, okay, guys, there's people that can speak very, very good English and have a very soft accent in several countries in the global economy that you got to say, well, can they do anything for me? Can they do, I don't know what function of your business can be done by in the global economy for a reduced hourly rate that saves you money to go and fight for this margin for yourself to be able to stay in business. What AI or what technology can you leverage to automate so you can stay in business? And I'm not always on the cost cutting side, but at some point you have to look at both sides of the equation. So sometimes you got to cut costs and reduce expenses, but still have the delivery available. On the other side, you got to drive revenue. So how do we look at the other side to drive revenue? And right now, a couple of ideas to give is, and I know one wants to do this because everyone's a little bit lazy, in a sense that in the healthcare staffing space, you can get lulled into a false sense of security with an MSP. Okay. And so if you don't have an MSP or the MSPs aren't performing for you, you've got to go sell. And you gotta go and get new customers and sell. And sometimes this might be selling the same offer or selling new offers or re-engaging customers or even do a better job than your competitor, outperform them. And so those are a couple things to think through as you look at your staffing company and your businesses and say, okay, do I have something new and innovative? When I was selling the Gale software, this is back in 2017, 2018, it was like I was truly selling iPhones to people that were using fax machines, and they were just, their minds were blown because the technology was so cutting edge. It was revolutionary at the time. And so it was an easy sell in a sense that it actually did a good job. It actually was a differentiator because by the time you'd send an email to request staff for the day, I could plug in a month's worth of needs and have instant confirmation that was confirmed by the clinician themselves. Oh my gosh, that's revolutionary. So I don't know what the next big leap is for that solution from a sales perspective, but we got to innovate. We got to look and see what are the clients asking for? Where can that be some opportunity for innovation to see what will move the needle, what will add more value to the ecosystem that you operate in, and what will change the game. And so maybe it's something with AI. Maybe. I'm not saying yes, I'm not saying no, but you got to see what can you afford, what can you implement quickly, what do your clients want? That's actually the number one. And I'm a consultative salesperson. So that means I ask a lot of questions. I try and figure out what's the root cause of the pain. And really it goes upstream more and more and more. And when you figure that out, as an example, in the staffing industry, it's about scheduling. And so there should be a platform and a way to schedule all the internal employees. Then, whenever there's fluctuations, schedule the float pool employees. Then, when there's a little bit more fluctuation, and then now you're short staffed, then you can release all those additional needs to staffing agencies. That should all be in one place. And for years and years, it was not. And it's even the ones that do it now, it's still kind of okay. It's not perfect yet. So my point is that we still have room to innovate. We still have room to disrupt in the healthcare staffing arena. I talked a lot about travel in this, and I'll switch gears a little bit to the per diem space. I think it's the similar concepts. None of this has changed as far as the supply and demand, the clinician shortage. The thing about the wages too is that the facilities can drive this and say, hey, we're not going to use agency anymore. That's one lever. But then they also are coming back and saying, here's a $5,000 or $10,000 sign-on bonus. Oh, well, now that might be the thing that moves the needle to get some clinician to want to not be just a per diem clinician and want to work as a full-time clinician. So the facilities are moving towards more lucrative pay packages for those local clinicians that want to work per diem, and bringing them back into full-time. So that's where the finish of that sentence. So one more sip, and then I'll keep going. Okay, so the thing about per diem is it's useful. It's useful. I don't know if it should be your primary. What happens is, and when you get a flat tire, you catch an Uber to solve that problem for that day. Some places, maybe it makes sense to Uber as your primary means of transportation, but I don't know if that's everywhere. I don't know. And then now the pricing, you got to look and see, well, should I commute via Uber or should I buy a car? And that's the kind of dynamics you look at with per diem and PRN is, what is my need? Is my need always temporary, or is it pretty much temporary enough that I can buy a car? And so those are the dynamics that you have to look through when you're managing the resources and the staffing on your business. Or you've got to be willing to be more creative. So if you say, hey, you know what, I don't want to buy that car because I only need a car Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, but you have a buddy that needs a car Monday and Friday, and can you guys go halves on it? There's risk, there's all these other things. So that's an option. But this is where the staffing companies still have a business, is that those two friends can't make that deal. But I'll say, hey, I'll hire a bunch of nurses and I'll give you one for every day of the week. Oh, okay. And then that's the model now where we still have staffing. And so I think you're going to see still use of per diem. It'll be lower, but I think it's going to be more of that just in time, as it was meant to be in the beginning, where you just have your census or your fluctuation on patient volume goes up for that particular day or that particular week, and you need extra support. I don't know if you're going to build your whole life and career around just per diem staff. So that's my 2 cents. That's my thoughts. I'm going to just double check here if there's any comments, questions that came in when I was going on and on TikTok. And I'm going to make sure I double check LinkedIn as well. All right. So no questions here. And on the LinkedIn side, no questions as well. One question that people ask is, should I start a healthcare staffing company? And actually, as much doom and gloom as I told you today, I would say yes. I would just say you have to know what you want to do. It's a big industry, and you got to say, okay, where does the opportunity lie? I've said this before, and I'm doing this myself. I'm a practitioner, part owner of a couple of different companies, and so therapy still has so much potential upside in it, and locum tenens, it has a lot of upside in it. And again, you're hearing business, you're hearing revenue and money and growth. We still need to give patient care, guys. That's why I get so passionate about this, because when I was in the Marines, I got a paycheck, but I got to wear the super suit and fight for my country. That was great. And this is 9/11, so I get to have that quick moment here on remembering that tragedy that happened, but also, how we were able to just be so grateful to have servicemen and women that would deploy for us in defense of this great nation. So anyway, although I talk a lot about revenue, I don't miss the fact that we're providing patient care. That's very, very central to the mission that we have on all my companies, about making sure patients have care. How do we deliver it the best way possible? How do we make sure it's the best price available for both the clinicians and the clients, and then still, of course, run a business? How do we do those things? And then how do we innovate to stay ahead of the futurization of everything, or the democratization of technology with AI and things, to be relevant in 10 years, which can be hard. So those are a couple of my thoughts on per diem. I would still start a business today in the healthcare space. I would look for ways to innovate. I would look for ways to disrupt. And if you don't have that big money, then sure, sign up for a couple of MSPs, get your foot in the door, make friends, network, get something moving, and then still go find a direct client or two, or then 3 or 4, and then hire a salesperson to keep going, and then hire a recruiting team, and then hire what you need to do and scale a nice little company. And I wrote my next book. It's coming out soon. I'm in the process of editing it right now, but I walk through a whole game plan on how to do this stuff. And I try and give a lot of free content and be engaging and be available to help those that want to grow their companies from zero. Or if you're at 10 million or 20 million and you want to scale to 50 or 100, that's more than a quick TikTok video. Sorry, but let's connect, let's engage, let's see if I can help you, because I've climbed the mountain before. So that's where I've got the bumps, bruises, scars to tell about it, and but I also have the Super Bowl ring that we did it, and so that's the fun part of my side. The last thing I'll talk about too is exiting. Some people are the silver tsunami, joined in the industry or been in the industry for 20 years. Well, now it's not a bad time to get out. There's a lot of companies that if your company is profitable, making money, you're all set up, you have all the relationships and MSPs, and you have a team, this could actually be a really nice time to sell, especially because I can't tell you it's going to be better next year. I really can't. It's just, it's hard to time this market to say, oh, all of a sudden a staffing company multiple is going to go from 3.5 to 5.5. I don't know. I don't see that. So I would think that if you have a good business now, it's worth something. And if you want to get out, get out. If you don't want to do all these things, if you don't want to get technology, if you don't want to do AI, you're ready to kind of dial it in. Be careful, because if you go into that business or that 2026 with that mentality, you could be disrupted and you could lose business because you're not even keeping up with the status quo. So those are risks that you should be mindful of and avoid. If you're going to stay in the industry, be active in it. And if you're not going to stay active in it, then get an operator that can help you be active in it. I'm one, Vanessa's one, and there's others if we need more than our horsepower for a deal. But I want to help people have great careers, great companies, and be able to have great quality of life. And so that's where I want you to grow your company. I don't want you to just have it kind of bump along, because at some point you might catch a flat tire or something else happens, you're not well positioned. So those are my thoughts on per diem and travel. Again, DM me, connect with me on LinkedIn, follow me on TikTok. I'm working on this. I'll get better at and give feedback. If you guys want to see something, say something, DM for feedback as well. I enjoy helping people grow their companies. Yes, this was healthcare staffing. I love the staffing industry, but I have worked outside of staffing, and then I've worked in other pieces of staffing besides just healthcare. So anything I can do to help you, please don't hesitate to reach out. And then have a great Thursday, everyone. Take care. I'm going to say bye to my TikTokers first. And this is it. And then I'm going to say bye to everyone on LinkedIn. And I'm still working on the LinkedIn Live. I got to work on that, get it a little bit better. Thanks, y'all.